Welcome to the Biotech Executive Brief, your daily rundown of the developments shaping artificial intelligence, pharma and life sciences, and the broader business landscape. We focus on the specific news executives should have on their radar, from AI infrastructure and major technology deals to clinical results, regulatory decisions, manufacturing investments, earnings, and the economy. If you find these updates useful, subscribe to the Biotech Executive Brief to get daily updates on the industry and stay current on the developments that matter most. Today's brief covers Wednesday, August 19th, 2026. Let's start with artificial intelligence, where today's news is heavily focused on the infrastructure required to support the continued expansion of AI. And one of the biggest announcements comes from Google and Marvell. Marvell will help Google develop custom AI chips under an agreement that also gives Google warrants potentially worth $12.2 billion in Marvell shares. If the associated targets are met, the agreement could generate as much as $120 billion in revenue for Marvell through fiscal 2033. It's a significant win for Marvell and another indication that Google is looking to expand the supply chain supporting its custom AI infrastructure. And Marvell isn't the only semiconductor company benefiting from surging AI demand. Samsung Electronics has raised prices for certain advanced contract chip-making services by as much as 15% as demand puts additional pressure on semiconductor manufacturing capacity. The increases were particularly pronounced for customers in China and the United States. Capacity constraints at TSMC are also creating an opportunity for Samsung to capture additional foundry business. Analog devices provided another window into how widely AI infrastructure spending is spreading across the semiconductor industry. The company forecast fourth quarter revenue and earnings above Wall Street expectations as data center and industrial customers increase purchases of power management chips. That's important because the AI semiconductor story is much broader than GPUs. As computing density inside data centers increases, those facilities require an entire ecosystem of power management, networking, electrical and cooling technologies. Nvidia, meanwhile, is seeing some of its H200 processors reach mainland China. According to today's brief, small shipments have begun arriving, with ByteDance and Tencent reportedly receiving roughly 10,000 chips each. But there's another side to the story. Chinese authorities are simultaneously encouraging companies to limit mainland deployment of those processors as Beijing continues promoting domestic semiconductor alternatives. So, Nvidia is beginning to regain some access to an important market, but that access exists within a much larger competition between demand for advanced U.S. technology and China's effort to build its own semiconductor capabilities. The infrastructure story doesn't stop with chips. European data center developers are increasingly looking outside traditional urban centers for cheaper land, lower cost electricity, and faster connections to the power grid. Projects planned for 2026 through 2028 are being located substantially farther from major cities than previous generations of facilities. Power availability is increasingly becoming one of the fundamental constraints on data center expansion, and we're seeing a similar ripple effect in the United States. The American data center boom is creating growth opportunities for companies that, at first glance, may not look like obvious AI beneficiaries. Think generators, transformers, cooling equipment, construction machinery, and industrial components. Generac, for example, plans a $250 million factory expansion and has accumulated a $1.6 billion backlog specifically for data center generators. That's a very tangible example of AI capital spending moving beyond Silicon Valley and into traditional manufacturing and industrial supply chains. There was also a major AI transaction today. Stripe agreed to acquire OpenRouter, a platform that allows developers to route workloads across hundreds of different AI models. Reuters reported the transaction at slightly more than $8 billion, although Stripe didn't publicly disclose the purchase price. OpenRouter sits at an interesting layer of the AI stack. As companies gain access to more models, infrastructure that helps developers decide which models to use and route workloads between them becomes increasingly valuable. For Stripe, the acquisition also pushes the company beyond its traditional payments business and further into infrastructure supporting AI consumption and billing. And finally, today's AI section includes an important counterweight to all of that investment and expansion: safety. A study from Guidelight AI Standards found significant gaps in how leading AI developers handle model containment, monitoring, and independent oversight. Anthropic and OpenAI received the highest marks, but those grades were only C+. Google, xAI, and Meta scored lower. The takeaway from the study is straightforward. AI capabilities are advancing quickly, but the industry's ability to contain and monitor increasingly capable systems still has substantial room to improve. So today's AI news gives us a pretty complete picture of the industry. Google and Marvell are deepening the custom chip supply chain. Samsung is raising foundry prices. Nvidia is getting limited H200 shipments into China. Analog Devices is benefiting from data center power demand. Stripe is buying OpenRouter. Data centers are spreading into new geographies, and their construction is creating opportunities across industrial supply chains. Meanwhile, questions around AI safety and containment are becoming harder to ignore. Now let's move into pharma and life sciences, where today's biggest stories include a major cancer vaccine result and two significant FDA approvals. Moderna and Merck reported positive late-stage results for their personalized mRNA cancer vaccine, intismeran in combination with Keytruda for melanoma. The treatment reduced recurrence and spread of the disease in the pivotal study. That's a major milestone for personalized cancer vaccines and strengthens the case that mRNA technology can have important applications well beyond infectious disease. Investors certainly reacted that way. Moderna shares more than doubled as the market reassessed the potential value of the company's oncology pipeline. Regeneron also had a significant day. The FDA approved Pasatru, also known as garetosmab, for fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, or FOP. FOP is an ultra-rare genetic disorder in which soft tissues progressively turn into bone. In the pivotal study, Regeneron's therapy substantially reduced abnormal bone formation compared with placebo. That gives Regeneron an important new rare disease approval in a very small and highly specialized treatment market. Ultragenyx secured another rare disease milestone. Its gene therapy Genglycos became the first FDA-approved gene therapy for glycogen storage disease type 1A. The therapy is designed to address the underlying genetic cause of the disease and could reduce patients' dependence on frequent cornstarch dosing to maintain their blood glucose. Ultragenyx priced the one-time treatment at $2.7 million per patient. Obesity remains another important development area. Novo Nordisk launched a late-stage study designed to determine the lowest effective maintenance dose of its oral Wegovy therapy. The 60-week OASIS-5 trial will examine whether smaller doses of oral semaglutide can maintain meaningful weight loss while potentially reducing treatment burden and side effects. That's another sign of how competition in obesity is evolving. It's no longer simply about which company can produce the most weight loss. Dosing, convenience, tolerability, and treatment maintenance are increasingly important dimensions as well. There was also deal-making in immunology. Tolerance Bio agreed to pay NeoImmuneTech up to $260 million for rights to efineptakin alpha, a long-acting IL-7 fusion protein, across certain thymus-related indications in the Americas and Europe. The transaction moves Tolerance directly into clinical development and gives the company a phase 2 stage opportunity focused on thymus biology and immune-mediated disease. Manufacturing was also prominent today. SK Pharmteco completed 2 new manufacturing facilities at its Swords campus in Ireland. The expansion adds commercial-scale capacity for small molecule active pharmaceutical ingredients, as well as highly potent ingredients, including payloads used in antibody-drug conjugates. That investment is particularly relevant given the continued expansion of ADC pipelines across the pharmaceutical industry. But today's manufacturing news wasn't all about capacity expansion. The FDA issued warning letters involving Aurobindo's Ujia operation in India and Kilo Pharmaceuticals Sci-Tech in China. Regulators cited issues involving aseptic processing controls, manufacturing procedures, process reproducibility, and product listing compliance. It's another reminder that expanding pharmaceutical manufacturing capacity is only one side of the equation. Maintaining compliant quality systems and reliable processes remains fundamental to keeping that capacity operational. And finally, there is a much more difficult story involving Wegovy. Gene editing experts are examining the company's clinical development decisions following the death of a participant in one of its trials. The scrutiny includes questions around study design, interpretation of safety information, and the transparency of disclosures surrounding the event. The situation is increasing attention on how safety signals are evaluated and communicated as increasingly sophisticated gene editing therapies move through clinical development. So across life sciences today, the range of news is significant. Moderna and Merck delivered a major late-stage melanoma result. Regeneron and Ultragenyx secured rare disease approvals. Novo Nordisk is refining its oral Wegovy dosing strategy. Tolerance Bio made a $260 million licensing move. SK Pharmteco expanded manufacturing capacity in Ireland. And FDA warning letters and the Wegovy situation kept manufacturing quality and clinical safety firmly in focus. Now let's finish with the broader business landscape. Retail earnings give us several useful snapshots of the consumer. Target raised its annual sales forecast for the second time this year after comparable sales increased 3.8%, supported by stronger store traffic and digital sales. The company now expects approximately 5% annual net sales growth, providing further evidence that its turnaround is gaining traction. Lowe's had a more mixed report. The company beat quarterly profit expectations as consumers continued spending on necessary repairs and maintenance. But Lowe's lowered its annual comparable sales outlook as shoppers remained cautious about expensive renovation projects. The distinction is important. Consumers are still spending when work needs to be done, but they're showing more hesitation around large discretionary home improvement projects. Estée Lauder delivered a stronger outlook. The company forecast annual profit above many Wall Street expectations as luxury fragrance and skincare demand improved, including stronger performance in China. Shares moved sharply higher after Estée Lauder also beat quarterly expectations. TJX companies beat overall earnings expectations as well, although comparable sales growth at TJ Maxx and Marshalls slowed. Management characterized much of that weakness as self-inflicted and related to merchandising execution rather than a structural deterioration in consumer demand. TJX still raised its annual profit forecast. Outside retail, Amazon announced a significant expansion of Prime Air. The company plans to grow drone delivery from 11 operating locations to coverage reaching roughly 500 U.S. cities and towns by the end of the year. That's a major step toward broader commercialization of drone delivery, although local approvals and concerns around noise, safety, and privacy remain part of the rollout. The Federal Reserve also provided an important macroeconomic update. Minutes from the July meeting showed policymakers becoming increasingly concerned about persistent inflation. Several officials were prepared to support higher interest rates if price pressures fail to ease. That keeps interest rate uncertainty firmly in the business environment, particularly for companies making financing and capital investment decisions. Energy markets are adding another variable. Oil climbed to its highest level in nearly 4 weeks as escalating tensions in the Middle East increased concerns about global supply and traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Brent settled at $91.62 per barrel, while U.S. crude closed at $85.83. And finally, Indian fintech company Navi is raising $100 million from Prosus ahead of a planned IPO. It's Navi's first institutional financing round, and Reuters reported that the company is targeting a public market valuation of roughly $2 billion. That gives us a pretty broad business picture today. Target and Estée Lauder are showing improving performance. Lowe's is seeing consumers remain cautious around major purchases. Amazon is accelerating drone delivery. The Fed remains concerned about inflation. Oil prices are elevated by geopolitical risk, and capital continues flowing towards scaled digital businesses like Navi. That wraps up the Biotech Executive Brief for Wednesday, August 19th, 2026. Across AI, Google and Marvell's massive custom chip partnership leads a day dominated by semiconductor capacity, data center expansion, AI infrastructure, and the growing importance of model safety. In Pharma and Life Sciences, Moderna and Merck's melanoma results and new FDA approvals for Regeneron and Ultragenyx lead the clinical and regulatory news, alongside developments in obesity, biotech dealmaking, pharmaceutical manufacturing, and gene editing safety. And across business, earnings from major retailers, Amazon's drone expansion, Federal Reserve inflation concerns, and higher oil prices provide the broader economic backdrop. If your organization is navigating AI, digital transformation, manufacturing technology, or technology strategy within life sciences, Sternbridge Technology Consulting helps biotech executives translate emerging technologies and industry change into practical strategy and execution. Subscribe to the Biotech Executive Brief to stay current on the developments shaping AI, pharma, and life sciences and business. Thanks for listening to the Biotech Executive Brief from Sternbridge Technology Consulting.